Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. How you doing, Jim?
Doing absolutely fantastic, Douglas. Hi, everybody.
This week our guest is the Vice President of the Ayrshire Association of Burns Clubs, cronies everywhere. Please welcome Martin Cassidy.
Hello Douglas, hello Jim. Thanks for the great honour for inviting me to speak at this very prestigious event. I feel very honoured, so thanks for inviting me along. So feel free to ask me any questions you feel comfortable doing. My personal life, my private life's fine as well, but particularly about my association with Burns from a very young age.
Well, thanks for that, Martin. But you'll know if you've watched any of the episodes of My Life with Robert Burns, that we always start with the same question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, my background was a Linwood boy, Linwood in Renfrewshire. I have no Ayrshire associations at all. Went to school in Linwood in secondary school, and then when I got my higher English, I got a B in my higher English, but that wasn't good enough for me because I wanted to have an A so that I could apply to do my nurse training. Now, at that time, I aspired to do my nurse training. I'd done an access to nursing course at the Reed Care College, which was in Renfrew Road in Paisley. Now, that was quite a strange connection with literature because my lecturer, a Mr. Strachan, he was quite an eccentric gentleman, very patriarchal type of gentleman and a disciplinarian, which was quite strange at a further education college. He was more like your traditional headmaster of a school. He introduced me to Tennyson and he introduced me to Milton and things I'd never heard of before. And I remember a part of a poem by Milton about on his blindness was one of Mr. Strachan's favourite poems. And then eventually, as I get more involved in literature, like Mort D'Arthur by Tennyson and On His Blindness and other poems at that time, it whet my appetite for more interest in all literature, including some stuff in Tannahill and Paisley, but then Burns became a secondary thing. A number of years later, I was introduced to Burns, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. That was through my connections later on in my career.
Did you always plan to go into nursing? It sounds to me as though that was in your mind all the time through school.
Yeah, well, I was interested in poetry, and when I was in school, I always wanted to be a nurse. I always wanted to look after babies. I've always loved babies, and I was actually Scotland's first registered midwife, male midwife. I was the first registered practicing male midwife in 1992. So I always thought I wanted to look after babies. So initially it was paediatric nursing that I thought I would do, and I'd done a bit of that, but then I developed into doing midwifery, which was really challenging, but I had a very, very successful midwifery career, thankfully.
And where did you go to study your nursing?
I studied my psychiatric nursing in Ravenscraig in Greenock, and then years later developed associations with people from my nursing career through the Mother Club in Greenock, and reconnected with people who were former colleagues and friends through my career in Greenock. I then was a charge nurse and staff nurse in Merchiston Hospital in Brookfield, and then Dyke Bar in Paisley. And then I'd done my general nurse training in what was the Southern General Hospital, which is now the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow. And then I progressed on and done my midwifery training. I'd done that in Paisley Maternity. And I succeeded in doing my diploma in neonatal intensive care. And I also got my nursing and health studies degrees at Napier University in Edinburgh. I'm a well-kent lug in Edinburgh, which is quite strange. So I've got a lot of connections through Burns and other organisations in Edinburgh, so that's quite nice.
Very good. And was nursing in your family? Is there a connection there that got you interested?
Ironically, my older sister always wanted to be a police officer, but she ended up doing nursing in the old Royal Alexandra Infirmary, which then changed to the Royal Alexandra Hospital. But she then went on, done nursing, as I say, and then she developed and became a specialist ophthalmic nurse and sister, nurse manager. And then she became a health visitor. And then she subsequently retired, unfortunately, due to poor health. So she was an influence in my nursing career.
And when you got to the stage where you decided to move on, what did you do next?
Yeah, well, I left, and then I was a lecturer at further education college, but my remit was to support the first year students of mature students, people who had been nursing assistants and didn't have the confidence initially to go and do their degree. So I was like the support lecturer for the first year of their nursing course at university to change their mindset. So they had a lot of mature students, but they were very, very caring and kind, compassionate and empathetic people, but they were scared of academia. So I helped them a little bit in the first sort of leg into the academic world and research and things.
And we now know that you moved on to run your own business. So how did that come about?
Yeah, it was just an opportunity because I was finding that a lot of the frontline care staff in care homes and residential and respite centres, social care and healthcare, they weren't getting the appropriate training. And obviously people were suffering because of the consequences of lack of training for the clients and the customers and the patients. So I developed my own healthcare company, initially as a first aid training company, but then I decided to expand my portfolio, which is quite all round now for all healthcare areas, covers everything from stress and de-stress, which is de-escalation and exit strategies, to catheterisation, to wound care, to end of life care. And I travel all over Scotland and down to the northeast of England to deliver those training courses, and they're always very well received.
And is it a one-man business, or do you have a team working with you?
I've got associates who work for me because they're clinicians, and that's good because it keeps them fresh, as I am. I keep fresh because I've got a customer base and clients that I go in and support in their home, and home care providers as well. So it's good that they can keep up fresh with the modern contemporary clinic sort of side, but also do the training delivery. So these staff, they're working in the clinical areas. So the good thing is they're getting a balance of the contemporary clinical advice, and it's straight off the press.
With all this education and training and your own education and time spent learning all these different aspects of nursing, did you have time for any hobbies or interests?
Yeah, I was an amateur boxer from I was approximately 14 till I was 25. And I succeeded quite well. I'm amateur boxing, but it was a sort of consideration for me to turn pro. Ironically, when I was 25, I was a practicing midwife, and I was very super fit. So it was a consideration to change from being a midwife to a pro boxer, but my trainer talked me out of it. Because nursing would be a long-term career, whereas boxing would be a short-term career. So he talked me out of that. Stick with it.
These things seem to be the opposite ends of a spectrum, you know.
Absolutely.
The nursing, you're trying to heal people. At the other end, you're trying to knock the living daylights out of people.
That's right. Well, boxing, of course, the best defence is your offence. Ironically, the date when I qualified in my general nursing to get my graduation certificate, I had been sparring with a young, less talented boxer. A young boy, and he threw a punch and he poked his thumb in my eye. So the day of my graduation, with my white nursing uniform and my nursing badge, I've actually got a kicker. Standing with both my mum and my dad, who were very impressed and proud of me, but I've got a kicker. I knew that my boxing career was coming to an end, because you can't really have black eyes or cuts in your face when you're a midwife in a labour ward.
Oh dear, oh dear. And have you always lived in the west of Scotland?
I have, yeah. I lived in Linwood and then moved to Govan. There's many happy years living under the shadow of the Govan shipyard when I worked in the Southern General. I then met a lady who I then became my wife, and we moved to Crookston. which is the top end between Barhead and Nits Hill and Pollock. And then I moved up to Newton Mearns, where I was for 22 years until I divorced. And now I'm back in Linwood in what was my parents' house. I bought my parents' house and I've renovated it. And where I am just now is my Burns room. And you'll notice it's hodden grey. I've also got plates with Tam O'Shanter and his ancient trusty Druthie crony. I've got pictures of Tam O'Shanter, Burns, I've got everything round about. And I've got Burns' statues, and I've got some trinkets and mugs and other things too. And even recently, I decided at my age of 56 that I would get my Burns tattoo. So I've got a Rabbie Burns tattoo, the length of my left arm.
Oh, you need to let us see that more clearly.
Yeah, well, it's really from Turbolton, because I will explain later the influence of the Freemasons in my life and the support I've had from Uncle John, who was a fervent Freemason, and his interest in Burns, and how I didn't get interested in Burns because of the Freemasons. The two things coincided with one another. So you probably see the picture in the background is from Turbolton, where Robert Burns was the deputy master. And you'll know already, I expect, that being the deputy master, he wasn't really deputy to anybody. He was a functional master of the lodge. So in my tattoo, I've got off honour the Supreme Command, presided over the sunlight. I don't know if you can see that. That was just a wee gift to myself, really, after having quite a emotional turmoil after my mum died, simultaneously as I got divorced. So I'm getting another tattoo in January. So I'm not going overboard. I'm not going to be the tattoo man. But I'm a mod. You maybe know about the mod scene, the Who, Small Faces. So I'm getting the Who tattoo done in my other arm. And that's not expected until the next availability, which is in January 22. So because these guys have been furloughed, they've got a backlog of doing tattoos. So that's my other passions, music.
So apart from the who are your favourite bands?
The Small Faces are up there. The Amen Corner, Andy Fairweather, Low, Paul Carrick, all these guys that were old-time bands are all my favourites. Eric Clapton, Cream, yeah. That's the joke. I went to the doctor. I says to my doctor, I think I'm allergic to Eric Clapton. He says, I'll give you Cream for that. So yeah, so music's a big part of my life.
So what image of the Who are you going to get in the tattoo?
I'm going to get, it's a cover album from The Kids Are All Right, which is the band members, and they're lying under like a quilt or a cover that's the Union flag. Yeah. Down the base of the tattoo, I'm going to get the Who RAF target with the male emblem and the male sort of the arrow. And also I'm taking out the Kids Are All Right, and I'm going to put in my epitaph, which is "Won't Get Fooled Again." So that's my divorcee slant on that one. Won't get fooled again.
And you're not bitter.
And I'm not at all bitter, because it's the best thing that's happened to me. I've developed so many new friends in Linwood. My neighbours 2 doors down, I've got an adorable Rottweiler puppy who I adopt every now and again, and they like me to adopt the puppy because they work strange hours. And I couldn't have a dog because it's too much responsibility. It's quite tiring. So I've developed lots of friends again. The social club in Linwood is Linwood Welfare Recreation Club. So another part of my life is Glasgow Rangers. So that was a Linwood Rangers club. My own mother lodge is in Linwood, and I'm the master of that lodge later next year. So I'm very handy for my sister who lives down the road, the shops, the Phoenix Centre, the retail park, social outlets, the bus route, the car route, everything's perfect for me in Linwood.
Sounds as though you found your nirvana.
Yes, I have, yeah. I have indeed, Douglas, yeah.
Again. So Martin, we've mentioned Burns a few times in the first part of this episode. So let's get talking about it for real, and I'll get Jim to get you started in a conversation about your life with Burns.
Well, the first one's the same for everybody. How did you get started with Burns?
Really, a more formal interest was through our dearly departed friend and crony, Bob Morrison. When I was a nurse manager at Crosshouse, or Cross House Hospital in Ayrshire, I was in charge of the unscheduled care services, which was ADOC, Ayrshire Doctors on Call. Bob Morrison was a retired police officer at Prestwick Airport, and he was the president or past president of Alloway Burns Club. And he was showing his interest in me about burns and his passion for burns. And it sort of got me really, really interested in a formal way. I then attended an event at Alloway Burns Club and at the cottage and at the village hall and at the church hall, and the people were all fantastic. And then as I progressed more, I was an office bearer, and then I was a president. So one of my great highlights, in a sense, a life achievement and a life highlight, has been the past president, or being the president of Alloway Burns Club. One of the most exhilarating things that has ever happened to me is to chair a dinner in the Brigadoon House Hotel, wearing the chain of office in the village where our bard was born, and the backdrop being the old bridge when somebody's reciting Tam O'Shanter. You just can't beat that. Another great experience was an event in Alloway Parish Church on the Sunday after Burns Day. And I got to hold the actual original manuscript of Holy Wally's prayer. I know I'm not getting MD into trouble, but the curator at the time, David, he says, "Do you want to hold this?" So I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't know." He says, "No, it'll be all right, it'll be all right." And it was actually transcendental, the feeling I had by holding the sort of claret stains and corrections on the paper that Burns actually held, that Burns actually wrote Holy Wally's prayer. Andy Moynihan, who's a member and then a past president of Alloway Burns Club, we had a club outing to Mauchline, and I recited Holy Wally's prayer at Holy Wally's grave in the churchyard in Mauchline. And Andy says, purely because of me doing that, is we'll get him into Burns. So from Bob Morrison and Alloway Burns Club and Alloway Burns Club outings and Holy Wally, that's got Andy's wife, Tracy. He was a secretary at Alloway. And when I was the president at Alloway, one of my key focus was young people. Get young people into Burns, because the attrition rates were terrible because of demise or poor health and people leaving, and we weren't getting young blood in. So things like our website at Alloway Burns Club's fantastic. I recommend that you have a look at that. It's very, very precise, and it's very inviting and very informed. And I'm very proud of that achievement, to get social media and other aspects of the modern world to keep Burns's memory alive.
I'm glad you mentioned Bob, because I remember he was in the committee, the Air Police Burns Supper Committee,
Yep.
for many, many years. And the first time he ever spoke was I think it was 1998. It was the first year I chaired it. And Burns, he did the vote of thanks, and Bob I've got the video of it up the stairs. He was a real character. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, Martin, in terms of Burns, was I know you've got an association with Burns in Glasgow, and,
Yep.
and I've heard the talk, and I think it would be of value to the folk watching for you to explain how that came about and what it is you actually do in the lecture.
Association with Burns in Edinburgh and Burns in England and Burns everywhere else, Ayrshire, of course. But there's a lot of associations, like Betty Burns is in Pollock Shields. She was a daughter of Burns, through Mr. Thompson, who was a militiaman who was married. And loads and loads of different Glasgow connections with Burns. And Glasgow has got very passionate Burnsians. I've got great associations with the Brigton, or Brigton as we prefer, Brigton Burns Club. I'm actually currently the senior vice president of the Glasgow Haggis Club, which is a very prestigious club. So I'm immensely proud of being invited to be that. And we have lots of outings and events. We were at Dumfries House as a day out for our spring outing. And this year, the Glasgow boys, as we call ourselves, the Haggis Club, we're heading off to Edinburgh. And we're going to be in the company of such prolific Burnsians as Alan Beck and Cameron Goodall, who are wonderful gentlemen, but who I'm immensely proud to have as friends. So we're going to have a smashing day doing a tour around Edinburgh. But Glasgow, there's a number of different things about Glasgow, the Deer Green place, and about connections with Burns as things went on throughout the years. So I do an immortal memory. Burns in Glasgow. I try to restrict immortal memories to 20 minutes. Really, in a sense, because unless you're really into Burns, we can overcook it and put people off Burns. So Angus Middleton, my dear friend, who's a past president of the Robert Burns World Federation and Skelmerley Burns Club, who you know very well, he said 17 minutes. That's the ideal immortal memory. Now, I've heard Polish performers like Jim Thompson speaking longer than that. And I could listen to you read a telephone directory, James, and still be interested. But the thing is, sometimes you can overcook it. So I tend to leave it at 17 minutes, and then people, they maybe be interested. So I point them in the right direction. The next time they're up in Pollokshields, go to where this Cross Maloof is, and Betty Burns is buried in the graveyard there, Burns's daughter. So, and all the other connections after that, his sort of grandsons who performed at an event to commemorate their granddad and stuff, I do that as an immortal memory, and it's usually well received. Yeah. I remember we saying about the police connection. I get invited to deliver the immortal memory at Tain, up in Tain, Strathpeffer Burns Club. One of my former student nurses is now a district nurse. She's a mature lady now, but she was just a student back in the day. Her dad was the secretary of Strathpeffer Burns Club, and he asked me when I was involved in running the Scottish Open. I was an information coordinator for the European tour for the Scottish Open, and we were running it at Inverness, and he was there with his daughter to watch the golf. Anyway, he invited me to do the immortal memory 2 years from now. I says, "Oh, that's good, that's good." So I thought, I'll do Burns in Glasgow, because people there will not know. People in Dingwall and Tain and Steffa, they'll not know about Burns in Glasgow. So when I got there, to my surprise, the vast majority of the members of the club up there are retired police officers from Renfrewshire, Winston, Linwood, Glasgow, Paisley, Lochwinnoch. So, but I told them things about Burns in Glasgow that they didn't know. So that made me feel really, really proud. So that was a very enlightening experience. And a gentleman who I befriended through the Burns movement, a gentleman called Ramsay McGee, he was telling me he was a retired chief commander of the police in the Highlands. And then subsequently, I discovered Ramsay McGee. He's actually now the Grand Master Mason. So again, the Burns connection, the Freemasons, and my own Freemasonic background. So it's quite strange how you bump into people for no apparent reason. I was up in the golf, running the golf, and I got a phone call from Ian Doole. And Ian Doole is a past president of Irvine Burns Club. And Ian is down in Irvine, showing people from Strathpeffer Burns Club around Wellwood, the museum in Irvine Burns Club. And the gentleman who came down from Strathpeffer are, of course, the people who I'd done the immortal memory to. I'm up in Inverness running the golf at their area, and they're down in my area talking to my great friend Ian Doyle about my immortal memory and how they enjoyed it. You can't beat that. It's just so unexpected. Now, the next thing in the police connection and the Burns connection was that when I was discussing me speaking to the boys down in Irvine, and they'd been at Strathclyde and the Burns and the police and stuff like that, and I mentioned Ramsay McGee, my coordinator for the marshals who recruits and takes on the marshals, a gentleman called Bruce. Bruce is like that. He said, "Oh, Ramsay McGee was my boss. I was actually successor in position as the commander in the police." And I'm like, that's the craziest thing that can possibly happen. Just by chance, out of all the people in Inverness and in the golf tournament, 120,000 people, I mentioned Ramsay, I mentioned Strathpeffer Burns Club, he mentions he's his boss and tells me a few stories. Another police connection back to Glasgow. I was invited to do the readings at East Kilbride Mountaineering Club. And I said I would do Tam O'Shanter and another poem which they were really happy about. Now, back to Bob Morrison. Bob had given me a number of VHS and Betamax videos from police bun suppers from the Toon Knock, which is Troon Town Hall. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, aye, that's where
And there was a young cop, a young, dynamic, very vibrant young cop on the set of these videos doing the immortal memory or doing the Toast of the Lassies, a gentleman called Eddie Haggerty, a young cop who's just starting out in his career really on the videos, but who happens to be the secretary years later of the East Kilbride Mountaineering Club, yet Eddie Haggerty. So I explained to Eddie, I'd never met him before, he was a new stranger to me in a sense, but I shook his hand and I said, "I've spent many a happy night with you, sir, and I've never met you. But I come in off a twilight shifts in the middle of the night from being a nurse manager, and I watched videos of you doing Burns suppers at the Toon Knock in Troon." So he became a firm friend. And Eddie's still partly involved in Burns, but he's more a Viking reenactment person. He does reenactments of Up Hellier, and he's involved in that environment now. And ironically, I visited the Glasgow Police Museum, and if you've not done that before, I thoroughly recommend you do it because that's very enlightening. I went to the museum, and every man in the room had been at a Burns supper with me, and I'd been at a Burns supper with them.
Very good.
Well, Kent Lug.
Well, I'm glad you talked about Burns in Glasgow, and you never even mentioned Nancy Craig, and that was, I don't know how you managed to do that, but I can't remember last time I saw Eddie Haggerty. It's years ago now. I haven't seen him for a long time.
Yeah, he's sporting a beard and he goes out cycling and a lot, and he's really fit. So I'll pass your regards on to him because he's
aye, please do. But I mean, you're talking there about Burns suppers. Obviously, you must have a few Burns suppers highlights in your career.
Well, one of the faux pas I made was the first Burns supper I done doing readings was at my own golf club back in the day. It was Cathcart Castle Golf Club, which is in Clarkston, between Newton Mearns and Clarkston in Glasgow. And I was doing Tam O'Shanter, and being a novice, I learned it as words. And then only years later to discover you're better to learn it like you're telling a story, as if you're telling a ghost story to children. So anyway, I get up and I'm all dressed with my club tie and doing all the thing, and I'm sweating and a bit nervy, and it's like singing to my uncles. Tam, has they been queens all plump? It should have been, had they been queens all plump and strapping in their teens. But instead, in nervousness, I went, Tam, they'll get thy faring, and hell they'll roast thee like a herring. So my tam o' shanter first off lasted about 4 minutes. And then the gentleman in the golf club are like, what happened to the witch in the water and the tail getting cut off? And you've missed all that. Am I drunk? Am I drunk? They're saying, am I drunk? Or did I miss all that? So by the next time I got to do tam o' shanter, I'd done it absolutely perfectly. And it was a golf club again. But the last bit was a wee address to the golf club pro. And it was about the last line saying, instead of joy, it's like foot joy, because that's the golf shoe manufacturer. So it was a wee marketing ploy for the pro. I just pointed down, get your foot joys here.
So you play a bit of golf, Martin?
Yeah, I haven't played so much in the last couple of years as I've re-established my business interests. I'm also a funeral celebrant, and I'm also a cognitive behavioural therapy practitioner. So cognitive behavioural therapy helped me emotionally when I went through emotional turmoil to get myself back on track. It's a bit of like self-psychology to turn your mindset from negativity to positivity. And I've got a number of clients who I support, and I've done a number of funerals. So, and they've been very well received because they're very bespoke funeral eulogies that I do, not a sort of draft or a template. It's individual for a client or a person who's passed. And
you introduce a bit of Burns into that as well?
Yeah, I can do when the opportunity arises. Ironically, I got a phone call to do a funeral, and the family were saying, describing obviously the dad who sadly passed away. It says, can you give me a bit more information about your dad? He's like, yeah, well, he was a nurse. He's a psychiatric nurse, but then he developed into being a healthcare tutor. And I'm like, all right. So, and anything else? Yeah, he's a very, very fervent sort of passionate Glasgow Rangers fan. And I'm like, all right. And anything else? He's a Freemason. He loved Rabbi Burns. And I'm like, is that right? I'm thinking to myself, have I died? And nobody's told me. Oh, I couldn't. They said, is that all right? And I says, wait, and I'll tell you a bit about me. How specific could you get? How exact could it be?
You mentioned your love of tam o' shanter.
Yeah.
We couldn't persuade you to give us a few verses.
I can give it a go. Is a doff the cap to Jim Law. He does the abridged version. When Chapman Billies leave the street, remember tam o' shanter's mare. Shortened version. When Chapman Billies leave the street and Ruthie neighbours meet, as market days are wearing late and folk begin to tack the gate, while we sit boozing at the nappy and getting foo and unca happy, we think no on those long Scots miles, the waters, flaps and styles that lie between us and our hame, where sits our sulky sullen dame, gearing her brows like gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. That's a great introduction, isn't it? It's tremendous. You can visualise it. And I love Jim Thompson's book because it revived some of the stuff I'd forgotten about how excellent that poem actually is. And back in the day, no wonder people bought it in droves. No wonder thousands of people wanted that stuff. There's nobody matches that. It's unbeatable. Unbeatable from my point of view. You're actually seeing through the gate, you see the people, and you can see it all happening around about you. I mean, you go to the Holy Fair in Mauchline, again, that reactivates my Burns blood. That is just like being in tam o' shanter.
What other characters or what other stories from Burns reactivate that Burns blood in you?
Well, I like how he slagged off the people who were hypocrites. Addressed to the Unco Gid. You know, o ye ha was a good yourself, say pious and say holy. You've nought today but mark and tell your neighbours' faults and follies. His life is like a wheel gone mill, supplied with stores of water. The heap at hap at ebb and still, but still the clap plays clatter. And of course, you see yourself as theirs compared and shudder at another. Oh, that's old Scots. I love old Scots language. And I'm delighted that some of the young people are still using that and they're using it properly and it's been promoted in normal language, but particularly in academic areas. Shows it's never, ever, ever lost. I think that's fantastic. My favourite, I would say my favourite isn't Tam O'Shanter. I'd say my favourite's Epistle to a Young Friend. And partly because I've got a nephew called Andrew, who, although he's my nephew, he's a bit like a son to me. And my other nephew, Philip, he's like a son to me as well. And a Epistle to a Young Friend is just, you know, a fantastic thing. You know, it's a great poem, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'd love to hear you reading that if you don't mind.
Because I've been doing the other poem, give me a wee second to get my mindset straight. I sort of ran in tonight after work, so sorry about my dress, my attire.
No, it's no problem. There's no dress code for these.
Along he thought my youth were framed.
Along he thought my youthful friend, or something to have sent you, the which should serve no other end than just a kind memento. But how the subject theme may gang, let time and chance determine. Perhaps it may turn out a sang, perhaps turn out a sermon. You'll try the world soon, my lad, and Andrew, dear, believe me, you'll find mankind an unco squad, and muckle they may grieve you. For care and trouble set your thoughts, even when your end's attained, and all your views will turn to naught when every nerve is strained. I'll no say men are villains, or the real hardened wicked, wha hae nae check but human law, are too a few restricted. But doch, mankind are unco weak and little to be trusted. Itself the wavering balance shake is rarely right adjusted. Yet they with fall and fortune strife, their fate we shouldn't censure, but still to important end of life they equally may answer. A man may hae an honest heart, though poor to thoroughly stare him. A man may take his neighbour's part, yet hae nae cash to spare him. I free half on your story tell when we a bosom crony, but still keep something to yourself ye scarcely tell to ony. Conceal yourself as well as you can, the critical dissection, but keep through every other man with sharpened, sly inspection. You can't beat that stuff. That's just so informed. And it's quite ironic that at the time when Burns wrote it, I think it was in May, some 1787 or something around about that sort of time. He was only 26-year-old himself at the time, giving a man's worldly wise advice to a young boy. He wasn't mature enough. He was just a young man himself, but it's immense advice. You know, adieu, dear amiable youth, your heart may ne'er be wanting. May prudence, fortitude, and truth erect your brow undaunting. And ploughman's phrase, God send you speed, and better to grow wiser, and may ye better reck the reed than ever did the adviser. Just a wee slip there, but we'll leave that in.
Well done. Well done.
Right. Martin, you spoke about quite a few things in relation to Burns, and you're currently the Vice President of the Ayrshire Association of Burns Clubs.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I've seen you at a Burns or a Federation conference. Have you any ambitions to get more involved with the Federation as a whole?
Yeah, as my work stabilises, my income stabilises after the COVID outbreak, that is, I had been involved informally in more the youth recruitment back in the day. I think when John Haining and other past presidents were involved, I get involved with the Federation, and that would be an ambition in the next couple of years. I've got obviously different things I'm doing. I'm actually doing a master's degree in public health by distance learning at Glasgow University as well. I can dip in and dip out of that and do that at my own pace. As I've already mentioned, I've got been a master of my Masonic Lodge. I'm the president next year, of the following year, sorry, of Glasgow Haggis Club, the Ayrshire Association. I want to do everything right. I want to do everything right. I don't want to hash bash and take on too much and then let the Federation down, because the Federation is a fantastic organisation. I've met so many friends of long term through the Federation, and then subsequently I'm looking to follow in the footsteps of Alan Beck, of Mark Sherland, of yourself, Jim, and other past presidents of the Federation who I've got great admiration for, and their tenacity and their determination and their hard work. But I want to do it right. I don't want to do slipshod and be, you know, just half cut. So I want to do it right.
That's great to hear, because I think you've an awful lot to offer the Federation in terms of your personality and your abilities.
Thanks for the compliment. How much do I owe you, Jim?
You don't owe me anything at all, man. I call myself lucky to have you as one of my friends.
I'm doing it. So, yeah, the Federation is wonderful, and I'm so glad that the Federation is having its conference in Paisley in the Glen Hill Hotel, which is 7 minutes drive from here.
Are you going?
Yes, I am. I'm going Friday, Saturday, and of course the church service. I always like to go to the church service because it's like a closure and farewell, and you know, see you again to people who have been Federation. Maybe in the past I was intentionally outspoken because I had a sense that there was maybe factions or a dichotomy of a Burns family. The World Federation Burns family is the way I see it, as a Burns family. The families bicker and fall out, but you fall back in again.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and mine's a gin and tonic.
I'll be able to run you home as well, Jim, if you want.
I was just wondering if you were going to do any of the breakout sessions in your Burns room there.
Breakout. I have them in here. Round the back of me, I've got pictures of Tam O'Shanter and plates. I've got a poster of the Sons of Old Kelly. Just above me here on the left-hand side, I've got a Burns clock. I've also got a miniature Alloway cottage in the corner here. And I've got other trinkets and other sort of stuff on my sideboard and my storage cupboards here on the back of me. So it's very much a Burns room here.
It looks impressive.
Thank you.
So what if you could find anything would you want to add to it?
When I was in poor health, I was looked after and supported by all Burnsians and many friends. I was very lucky. Ian Doole came and took me to visit Colin Hunter McQueen, who's a very prolific author and writer and Burnsian, and his museum, basically a museum in his house, is a treasure trove. And he was so welcoming and he was so helpful, and his wife is so welcoming and so helpful. Yet, ironically, he doesn't feel comfortable being a narrator at Burns suppers. He doesn't like standing up and doing speeches at Burns suppers, but he's so informed. So that was a nice blend, and I spent a nice few hours. And in his possession, he's got a mausoleum, a Dumfries St Michael's graveyard where Burns is buried. He's got a size-scaled mausoleum. So I'd like something like that. That would be a good thing. But where I would put it, I don't know.
Well, if I remember, Colin has got these artifacts in every corner and every nook and cranny of his house.
Yeah, and it just opens up the sort of the book of Burns's life in every aspect, and you know, about his writing pens and his writing style, and then he's showing me the nib of the pen that Burns actually used to write. Now, was that the same pen that wrote Holy Wally's Prayer that I had the honour of holding the manuscript of, and the connection with the pen and my memory of the manuscript is just wonderful stuff, you know.
What manuscript was it? From which collection was the manuscript?
Well, the manuscript that was held in the Burns Museum in Alloway.
Right,
that
okay,
I
so
got to
right,
hold
it's the
back
Alloway
in
one.
the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
so the actual original, it was in a casing, and they took it in the case, the glass case, to be at the Burns church service with the Ayrshire Association. So I'm thinking, is that the pen and is that the same paper that I got to hold both of them that Burns had? So a nice feeling, you know. O thou that in the heavens doth dwell, what has it please is best thyself, sends into heaven and ten to hell, all for thy glory, and no for any good or ill I've done afore thee. I bless and praise thy matchless might, and thousands thou hast left in night, that I am here before thee sight, for gifts and grace, a burning and a shining light to all this place. Marvellous stuff. Marvellous.
Yep. Martin, thanks very much for the Holy Wally, because those first 6 lines to me are Burns' greatest 6 lines of verse, purely and simply because he takes the argument between Calvinists and Arminianists, the new licks and the old licks, and distills it into, you know, one verse of poem. It's just wonderful stuff. But I mean, and the last bit as well, those last sort of 3 verses, I just think are wonderful. And it'd be great if you could maybe have a wee bash at reciting them.
The last 3, oh Lord my God, that glib tongue aching, my very heart and flesh are quaking to think how we stood, sweat and shake and pish with dread, while he with hanging lip and snaking held up his head. Lord, in thy day of vengeance try him, Lord, visit them who did employ him, and pass that not in thy mercy by him, nor hear their prayer, but for the people's sake destroy him, and dinna spare. But God, remember me and mine, with mercy temporal and divine, that I for grace and gear may shine, except by name, and all the glory shall be thine. Amen, amen. And then the lights go out.
I mean, it's just, see, again, see that last verse, but, you know, this is him giving his, but he's going, but, you know, I know I'm brilliant, God, but I'll give you the credit. It just absolutely Burns at his best. It's just, when it comes to satire, he's just brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant, you know. And as I said, reciting it at Mauchline graveyard at the man's grave. And of course, Burns has used the artistic license in his description of Holy Willie. So it's probably not a fair representation of the poor man whose remains in that grave.
No, well, Burns didn't know who he was, didn't know him
No.
really at all. In fact,
Made it up.
the argument which he writes in several of the manuscripts, the argument that precedes the poem, he describes a man that isn't Wally Fisher. But the irony for me in that graveyard is the man lying next to him is Gavin Hamilton. You couldn't make that up.
Couldn't make it up. It's just fantastic.
Wonderful.
Another thing that's very positive is my, well, I'm happy to be involved, but not so frequently with the Bachelors Club performers. And some of my fantastic nights with yourself, Jim, and that, down at the Bachelor Club separately, with Joe Kennedy, God rest him, Joe McGinty. Joe McGinty and I were invited to do the Irvin Burns Lassies Burns Club, Irvin Lassies Burns Club, yeah. And I was to do the toast to the lassies. Now, I'm not chauvinistic in any way. I would have been murdered as a midwife. I was chauvinistic, but I knew I would get to engage the audience from the outset by saying something pseudo chauvinistic, and it worked. But Joe McGinty was looking for the exit, the emergency exit, just in case we had to go quick.
So you're going to tell us what the line was?
Yeah, I said, well, it's a great honour to be invited to do the toast to the lassies. I said, they say a woman's work is never done. I think you should get up earlier. And then I said, you know, it is completely politically incorrect, but they know it's very tongue in cheek. I says, I think you should get up earlier. Maybe that's why you don't get paid as much as us boys, you know. But then, of course, I used my charm, and then we mentioned Red Rose and A Fond Kiss, and you mentioned about Agnes McElhose, and I brought a Glasgow story in about from the salt market in Glasgow, and her dad being a surgeon, and then the Glasgow story again, and then it was a fantastic finale for the Irving Burns Lassies. So that was another great honour to be invited to do the toast to the reply to the laddies, which that's fantastic. And I've got so many great friends in Irving Lassies, our long-term friends, and they knew that I was very, very tongue-in-cheek. So it went very well, hopefully.
They're a great club. They really are. I love them to bits. They're a great club.
So,
excellent. Well, Martin, we're kind of running out of time.
Yep.
So I just want to thank you very much for spending time with us, telling about your close shaves with the Irving Lassies, and telling us a bit about your life with Robert Burns. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. It's been a great honour, and good luck with your successors. And the video link is a fantastic thing. Thank you.